Hello Scene Peepers. Welcome back to our channel. How's your watching experience so far? I hope you enjoy a delightful chilling time watching lots of movies with a bunch of popcorn in your lap. Today I would like to explain the 2016 American science fiction romance movie called Passengers. If you are a Jennifer Lawrence or Chris Pratt's fan, you aren't going to miss this movie. Both stars are giving their best to take you exploring the space in their lovely yet challenging way. It's surely one of the exquisite science fiction romance movies to watch. Spoilers ahead. Take care and enjoy. Peepers, have you ever imagined yourself hibernating and moving to another planet? The idea of space tourism has always been a mysterious yet interesting possibility to us. The story of this movie revolves around a mechanical engineer called James Jim Preston. 5,000 colonists and 258 crew members are traveling from Earth to the planet Homestead 2 in an autopilot high-class spaceship called the Avalon. Because it takes a 120-year journey for all the passengers to reach the new planet, they go into hibernation and sleep in a pod during the trip. One day, an incident happens. The spacecraft hit a big asteroid. The collision damages several systems in the spacecraft, producing a glitch in the hibernation pod that awakens Jim 90 years too soon. When he awakes, Jim has no idea what to do. He is given an introduction about his space journey by a female avatar. He then follows all the instructions of the avatar and the spacecraft and is instructed to go to his cabin for a normal life training. He even is sent to join a study group to learn about engineering. When he attends the training sessions, he finds out that he is the only one who attends the class. Jim tries hard to find someone to talk to in the spacecraft. He asks several androids and avatars in the spacecraft but finds no other humans awake beside him. Jim is trying to reach the spacecraft crews but finds himself can't enter the room because he has no authority. When he goes to the observatory room, he finally realizes that he is the only one who is awake and he wakes up 90 years too soon. Jim tries to send a message to Earth, informing the spacecraft company that there is a malfunction in his hibernation pod causing him to wake up too early. However, it needs 19 years for the message to arrive on the Earth. It even requires 55 years to receive the earliest reply from the Earth. It also costs him lots of money to send those messages. Jim feels hopeless. While touring around the spacecraft, he meets Arthur, an android bartender with whom he can have a decent conversation. However, Arthur can't help him and has no solution to his problem. Jim later tries to adjust his life with the spacecraft, eating a low-cost meal because he isn't a gold-class passenger. He also tries to find out how the hibernation pod works. In the end, Jim can activate his hibernation pod again but can't put himself to going back to sleep. He also tries to enter the crew room, but never succeeds even after several attempts. After talking to Arthur, he decides to just accept his fate and enjoys his life in the spacecraft, using all the facilities he can crack. Jim moves to a better suite, plays basketball, eats in a Japanese restaurant, and dances. At first, he enjoys all of those activities, but after a year, the repetitive all-alone life becomes dull. One day, Jim decides to take a walk in space by wearing an astronaut costume. He feels so lonely and looks like he wants to suicide. It is his lowest point of living alone in that spacecraft, but in the end, he just can't kill himself. While feeling unhappy and even after contemplating suicide, he discovers Aurora Lane. Aurora is a lovely young woman inside her pod. When living on the Earth, she is a writer. She joined the spacecraft to be able to find some amazing stories to write. Jim is smitten after watching her video interview. He considers resurrecting her for companionship but is conflicted about the morality of it, knowing that it would deprive her of her intended existence on their target planet. He eventually awakens her pod, convincing her that she, too, was a victim of a hibernation pod mishap. Jim also begs Arthur not to tell Aurora about what he's done. Like Jim, Aurora also tries to find out how to re-enter hibernation. She knows that she and Jim wake up too soon. She is so distraught about having to spend the rest of her life on the ship. Jim tells her that he has been trying anything he could since he woke up 1 year ago, but nothing can put him back to hibernation. After several unsuccessful attempts to re-enter hibernation, Aurora accepts the circumstances and resumes writing about her experience. They have a good conversation several times, learning about each other's life before the space journey. They also share their true reasons why they want to move to another planet. She and Jim grow closer as both of them spend the most time together exploring the spaceship. Jim shows Aurora some of the features in the spaceship that can be used for entertainment. They get to know each other and seem to like each other's company. One day, Jim asked Aurora for a date and took her to explore the space together, wearing some spacesuits. They eventually realize that they have fallen for each other. The two later share a romantic kiss. Some makeout scenes are also present to show how intense their relationship is. One other year passed, and on Aurora's birthday, Jim intends to propose to her. However, when Arthur overhears Jim's remark there are no secrets between him and Aurora, the android reveals the truth of Aurora's awakening. Arthur assumes that Jim must have told Aurora that he is the one who awakes her. Aurora is so angry and disappointed after knowing the truth. She feels like Jim has robbed her life away. Jim is chastised, shunned, and even attacked by Aurora. She snubs his apologies and avoids making any contact with him. Jim continues his life, planting a tree, and still trying to apologize to Aurora. Sometime later, both Aurora and Jim encounter several ship malfunctions and system rebooting. The elevator got stuck. There is also a malfunction in the food processor machine in the dining room. Somehow, Gus Mancuso, a deck chief officer, is awakened by another pod failure. They discover many cascade failures throughout the ship's systems using his code to gain access to the bridge. However, the computer doesn't identify the source of the faults. If the flaws aren't fixed, the ship will eventually sink, killing the passengers and crew. Gus tries to fix the damage with the help of Jim and Aurora. He also learns the truth about Aurora's awakening process after finding out there are no malfunctions in her hibernation pod. On the night when Gus just woke up, the ship's malfunction signal is worsening. The spacecraft's machine somehow lost its gravity, nearly killing Aurora, who was swimming at that time. They later find out that there are plenty of mishaps on the spaceship. However, before the machine gets fixed, Gus becomes gravely ill. He admits he has been feeling bad since waking up. According to the ship's automated medical suite, the Autodoc, Gus has pansystemic necrosis and just hours to live. Gus realizes all the symptoms were caused by successive failures of his hibernation pod. Gus offers Jim and Aurora his officer's ID before dying, allowing them to get entry to crew-only sections and attempt to repair the ship. Jim and Aurora discover a series of hull breaches caused by the asteroid's impact 2 years ago. The computer module in charge of the ship's fusion reactor power plant has been severely damaged, resulting in a cascade of problems as the processing capacity of other systems is redirected to try to keep it running. They fix the damaged module, but the outer vent breaks when the computer tries to vent the reactor to stop a runaway plasma reaction. Jim is compelled to use the manual controls in the vent tube to spacewalk and expel the plasma from the outside. The heat somehow becomes more and more uncontrollable, and the potential explosion even flies some fragments. One of those hurt Aurora, causing a slight injury to her arm. Jim later discovers that he must remain in the tube while Aurora commences venting from within the ship. She reveals she is afraid of losing him and being alone. She can't lose Jim. Aurora has no other choice than to vent the heat from the spacecraft. After releasing the heat from the spacecraft, Jim escapes the venting by using a door as a makeshift heat shield. Nevertheless, he is blasted out into space when his tether snaps, and his damaged spacesuit begins to lose air. Before dying, Jim apologizes again to Aurora. Afraid of losing Jim, Aurora jumps to space to save him. At first, she is unable to get him, but then manages to rescue Jim by pulling his tether. Aurora recovers a clinically dead Jim from space, selecting all possible resurrecting options in the Autodoc in panic. She manages to resurrect him. The two can't hold the feelings between them and share a passionate kiss. It is also shown in the movie that the Avalon resumes normal operations after its reactor is restored. After burying Gus in space, Jim discovers that the Autodoc can be used as a one-person hibernation pod. He offers to put Aurora back to sleep for the duration of the journey and tells her that he will be okay to live alone in the spacecraft. She chooses to stay awake with him. In the bar, Jim later presents her with the makeshift engagement ring he made earlier for the proposal. This time, Aurora accepts the ring happily and they get engaged. 88 years later, the ship's crews and passengers are awake and on time. They find a home that has been built by the couple in the spacecraft. At the end of the movie, we can hear her voice telling her story, describing her and Jim's idyllic life aboard the Avalon. I am so happy that the two main leads in the movie ended up together at the end. Seriously, I can't even imagine being like Jim. Living alone in the spacecraft for 1 year and still having sense in your mind requires a really strong psychological state. Understandably, Jim decides to wake Aurora so he will have company in that lonely spacecraft. Aurora probably just can't live without him. After watching this movie, will you guys still consider space tourism as something worth trying? All in all, there are so many mysteries about outer space that attract us to explore it. However, the idea of not being able to contact Earth from the spacecraft is terrifying. What do you think about the movie? Leave your comments below. Kindly subscribe to this channel for more similar videos. Please like and don't forget to turn on notifications for more updates. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.